Hello, everybody. I'm Fran Wagner, president of the League of Women Voters of Kentucky. I am so glad that you're here with us this morning for this Kentucky Voting Rights Basics that Susan Weston's going to be doing for us. As probably most of you know, the voting laws in Kentucky have changed. During COVID, they loosened up and we were able to do a number of things we couldn't do in the past. Since then, they've tightened up, but they're not as tight as they were before COVID. So it's important that we all know what those voting rights basics are and that we share that with everybody so that everybody can show up and vote. This morning, as we go through the presentation, if you have questions or comments, put them on the chat. That's how we'll be addressing them. Jen Jackson is going to be watching that. I'll be watching it and as Susan speaks, and that's how you can make comments and offer comments. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Susan Weston. I'm a Danville-based at-large member of the League of Women Voters, and I serve on the board. And I'm delighted to try to take a little time today to get you up to speed and help you get other folks up to speed on living with Kentucky's changed laws, which are not terrible, but are a little more complex than any of us quite want to take in. So we'll move through it and also welcome your questions. Quick introduction of us. The League is a nonpartisan political organization to encourage informed, active participation. We take action on issues, but we do not support or oppose candidates or parties. We support diversity, equity, and inclusion, and any person who subscribes to our purposes and policies is welcome to become a member. If you want to become a member, LWVKY.org is the place to do it. And we would love to have you. Jumping into our substance, I want to give you just a little organizational sense of what I'm going to talk about on voting rights. 5 major questions, beginning with, is your voter registration up to date? What photo ID are you planning to use? Which voting option will you use? And you will have 4 options, which is positive except for the confusion part about the 4-ness of it all. And then where will you vote? And then the final big question, how can you help family, friends, and neighbors answer these questions and also be participants in our democracy? So this is for you, but it's also hoping to move you into at least a little activism to build up democratic participation along with us. So to move into the registration issue, go back to begin with eligibility, some of which is really obvious and a couple of things deserve a little underlining. You can vote in Kentucky if you're a U.S. citizen and Kentucky resident, if you'll be 18 or over at the next November election. First thing to underline, 17-year-olds can vote in Kentucky May primaries if they'll be 18 by the November election. And that's relevant. You may know someone who's 17 today but has a birthday before or on November 8th. They can register now, they can vote this year. And then there are some negatives. To vote in Kentucky, you can't claim the right to vote in another state. You can't have been found mentally incompetent by a court. And you need either not to have been convicted of a felony or to have had your rights restored. If you know someone for whom that rights restoration option is going to be important, the link to give them is civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov. That'll give them a chance to look into whether they're eligible, and I will talk about that a little more later in the presentation. I'm sorry to have that wobble in my voice. This is the last of COVID. I think I'm almost done with it. I have been negative for a week and a half. Registration process is now primarily online at govoteky.com. And I'm going to say govoteky.com a lot today. So to register, when you go to that site, you click 6 boxes to confirm those 6 parts of eligibility we just discussed. You enter name, address, birth date, and social security number, and you click submit. And after that, you're watching your mailbox for a confirmation card saying your registration has been accepted. It's that simple. It's online. Folks can do it on their phones. One of my favorite pictures, I've got one of my kids and a significant other doing it at Blue Dog Cafe in Louisville. And I really have got to get that one framed on my mantle. The old familiar postcard or printed form way of registering is also still fully allowed. You can take one of those forms, fill it out, mail it to the address on the card, give it to someone running a voter registration drive, or turn in the card at your county clerk's office. Those are all allowed. I admit to an opinion that the online option is so much simpler that I think that's where almost everybody is going to go from now on, but the familiar older methods are still fully allowed. If you are registered, I do recommend that you check your voter registration. You can also do that at govoteky.com. And if you're there and realize you need to update something, you can do that. So if you've moved, you can update your address. If you've changed your name legally, you can register with the name you now use. And you can spot and fix any mistaken changes or removals. I do want to take a minute on this idea that your voter registration could be changed or removed without you having asked for it to happen. This is a thing we should all keep a little eye on. I do not think we are in any kind of big danger on this, but mistaken identity is a little bit of a possibility. So the basics are your voter registration address can be changed based on a report that you have moved within your county. And if nice officials are trying to do that to help you out, it will could change your voting location. So you want to spot that if it happened. If by any chance there are two Susan Westons in my county and they change me instead of the other one, I would really like to go tell them that needs to get fixed. I think that mistaken identity is the biggest risk on that. Your voter registration can be removed by voting officials immediately if they've got a death certificate, a felony conviction, a court mental incompetence ruling, or registration in your name in another state. That's a tight, small list. Again, the small possibility of two people with similar names is out there, and we don't want anyone getting caught on that. Then the final option is your voter registration can be removed more slowly based on a report that you have moved out of your county, and then a whole set of steps to check that they're right about that report. So the first step will be a mailing to your registration address asking if you've moved. If you answer that mail and say, no, I didn't move, that's the end of it. If you don't answer, there's a waiting period that goes through 2 federal elections to see if you show up to vote either in either the federal elections or if there's a state election in between without any federal ballot. So those are steps to check, and if you show up and vote at all, or you answer the mailing, you won't be removed. That said, I'm pretty sure Kentucky has a bunch of people still registered who have either moved out of the state or who have passed on and somehow the death certificate didn't get handled. And I say that because as of 2020, we had more people registered to vote than we had residents over the age of 18, which almost certainly means something slipped up in terms of removing people at the times that it would be appropriate. But I do want people to be aware of that, and checking your registration is a way to protect yourself against any mistakes about your identity or about you having moved. Second big step, Kentucky now requires photo ID to vote. This is a change that was made in 2020, and then it was put on pause because of the pandemic and the difficulties of people learning about it and implementing it. You need ID from one of the allowed sources, which I have listed here. Kentucky state government is the most classic. A driver's license is the most obvious kind of photo ID you could have. US government ID, like a passport, will work just as well. ID issued by any part of our defense establishment or the Merchant Marine or the National Guard will also be fine. Photo ID from colleges, universities, any kind of post-secondary technical or professional school will do. And ID from Kentucky local governments will do. So if you have any of those, you're covered as long as you remember to bring it with you when you go to vote. If you don't have any of those, you can get a free ID card from the state with your photo on it, and they won't charge you. You do that by going to a place where you can get a driver's license. But there's a trick if you got a driver's license even a few years ago. We used to all go to our courthouses to the circuit clerk's office, and the circuit clerk would give us the driver's license. Now it's the state transportation cabinet, and you can find the locations at drive.ky.gov. They're bigger offices. I suspect they're more spacious offices, but there's not one for every county. So you need to look that up if you're going to go try to get that photo ID. If you know someone who isn't a driver, this may be exactly a place where you can help them work through getting that ID and offer to drive them to their nearest office. A final option everyone should know about is that if you cannot get any of these IDs, there's an affirmation option. You fill out a form, you explain why you couldn't get the ID, and you show one of the other forms of ID that lots of us have. Another card from some other source with your name and photo, a social security card, a benefits card, a credit or debit card, or an identification issued by a Kentucky county with State Board of Election approval. Having that affirmation option is a good one to have in mind. If you haven't gotten ID, if you've lost ID, or if you hear someone else having trouble when they go to vote, that you can fill out the affirmation form option is one they should definitely know about. Now to the 4 voting options. My number one learning goal for these webinars is that people say 4 options for voting. And this is empowering, as I say, except for the fact that 4 is too many to remember off the top of your head. So the classic option is election day voting, show your ID and vote on election day. The new option on the street is early voting, where you show ID and you vote in person the Thursday, Friday, or Saturday before election day. And you do not need an excuse or an explanation of why you want to do that. Then we have an option earlier even than that, which is the excused option where you show ID and explain why you need to vote early. And you can vote in person on 6 business days before early voting begins. So that's going to put you all the way back to the Wednesday, 2 weeks before election day, that you can go in during regular business hours and vote early if you have a good reason. I'm going to go through all the reasons to have you alert on that. And finally, there's the classic mail-in voting, which we often call absentee voting, where you go online, you request a ballot, you give an excuse and provide some verifiable identification information, and they mail you a ballot that you can then return. So those are your 4 options for voting. And a big goal for me is for everybody to choose the one that works best for them. I'm going for early myself, because that'll get me done as soon as I don't have to give a reason. Election day basics, lots of us are familiar with. Kentucky voting is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. local time on election day. A thing that may have changed is your voting location. Bunch of reasons for locations to change. One is just precinct boundaries being updated. Another is precinct consolidation that allows voters from multiple precincts to share a location. And increasingly, counties are setting up voting centers where voters from all the precincts in a county can vote in the same place or several places. To find out your election day voting places, you can ask at your county clerk's office, or you can go to elect.ky.gov and choose find your polling location. That's a pretty easy step. I just looked in my county and I didn't memorize the locations yet. But that's available to check on the location. And the big thing to take away is, I don't know till I check. Most county clerks are doing a pretty serious job of advertising those locations. So the information may also just drop into your lap without you having to look. Oop. I missed one. Early voting for all is the new option. The law calls this no excuse in-person absentee ballot, but the core idea is the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before the election, you can go in and vote, and you just do it because you want to. You don't have to give reasons. The times will vary a little from county to county. It'll be at least 8 hours between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. on each of those 3 days, and the County Board of Election gets to choose the exact times. The location may be your county clerk's office, or your Board of Elections may choose another location. So to sort out exactly where and when you can use this option, elect.ky.gov is again your site, and you just click Find Your Polling Location. Moving up to with excuse. And the law calls this excused in-person absentee ballots. That'll be 6 business days before early voting. It'll be normal business hours, and it'll either be at your clerk's office or a place chosen by your county board of elections. And to find out exactly what counts as business hours and exactly what location your board of elections has decided on, you can ask your clerk. You can go to elect.ky.gov, and that's a multi-day option. It's worth knowing what the excuses are that get you this option of voting in those 6 earlier days. Age, disability, or illness is the classic first one, but if you're living out of state temporarily, or if you're a student and living out of the county, so you live in Boyle County, but you're going to Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green. If you're working or commuting during all the voting hours from election day and the no excuse days, if you've got surgery or hospitalization scheduled, if you're in the last trimester of pregnancy, if you're working as an election officer, or if you have that military overseas status, or you're a uniformed service member confined to base. That's a whole set of places. I will note, I keep looking at the surgery hospitalization option, where you can get this early option if you're going to have the surgery or your spouse is. I'm doing little words in favor of marriage equality, that's a thing that's built into being married and doesn't count for other relationships. So it's an important status to have if you need it. Finally, we move to the vote by mail options. Vote by mail is now open. Starting last Saturday, you could go and request a mail-in ballot at govoteky.com. You have until October 25th to get that done. But the best day to do it if you want to vote by mail is today. I would recommend, say, 12:02 this afternoon, as soon as we're done with the webinar, so that you've got that set up and there's no possibility of a mail surprise. If you choose vote by mail, the ballot needs to actually arrive at your county clerk's office by 6 p.m. on November 8th. So that means if you're mailing, you want to mail it several days in advance. If you're going to use a Dropbox option, you want to go by the Dropbox in time to meet that deadline. The one thing to know about the deadline for requesting ballots is for medical emergencies for you or your spouse, you can apply at your clerk's office after the October 25th deadline. So you're completely planning to vote on November 8th, and on November 2nd, you have a car wreck and one of you is hospitalized, you can still go in and ask for that mail-in ballot at your clerk's office. Who can use this option? It's a kind of similar list with age, disability, or illness as the most classic reason people ask for the the mail-in option. Living out of state or living out of the county as a student temporarily, or you're just going to be out of the county for all hours of in-person voting. And there are folks who have work schedules like that just don't let them be in town at all while the polling places are open. If you're in jail on criminal charges, but you haven't been convicted, if you're in the Crime Victim Confidentiality Program, if you're a military overseas voter, or you're just flat out unable to vote on any of the in-person days. I haven't come up with what that would be other than age, illness, travel, commuting, but it's a more open process than it was a few years ago in terms of who can participate. The process has a couple of small wrinkles to it. Everyone is now requesting their ballots through the website. This is allowing them to track things. It's allowing them to use barcodes to know where everybody's ballot is moving through the postal system. But it's not walk into your clerk's office the way I did in 2019. So you go there, you apply, you give your excuse and provide personally identifiable information for verification. So that's the equivalent of ID, but it's not quite like showing your driver's license. It's doing it through the portal. When the ballot arrives, you complete it and you use the 2 envelopes, following directions carefully. I do want to mention, I've heard people wrestle a little bit if they didn't notice there were 2 envelopes. That'll mess you up. So have in mind as you open what gets mailed to you that there are 2 envelopes you want to have, and read the directions twice and come back again later. I have just spotted Leah's question, and I'm going to answer it about the age requirement. She asked, over what age qualifies to use these absentee options? And the answer is the law doesn't say. So I think we're on our honor. I probably shouldn't claim it at 62. But people who are looking at this, getting to the polling place is increasingly difficult for me, and you can feel that as part of your age, I think you get to decide for yourself, it's time for me to do that. And that'll happen. Could be driving is a little harder, could be visibility is a little harder, could be new directions and going to unfamiliar places feels like a bit of a challenge. Could just be you are exhausted with the world and you are fully in the Social Security zone and you say, it's me. The law does not give you a standard you have to meet other than your own judgment and being able to say it honestly. I wouldn't, because I can't say it honestly yet. Once you completed the ballot, you return it by US mail or to a county drop box. You know how you find out where the drop boxes are? You go to elect.ky.gov and click Find My Polling Locations, and they have the drop boxes listed there too. You can track your ballot now at govoteky.com. So when you can see that the ballot has been mailed out to you, you can see that the ballot has reached the clerk's office when you mail it back. And one thing to look out for, once you've mailed in your ballot, is the possibility that they will notify you that there was something small wrong with your ballot. You didn't sign in the right place, your signature didn't look like the one they have on file, that sort of thing. We now have an option where you can go in and cure a ballot that had that kind of a problem, and that's something you want to do if they send you that notice. I need just a second, if I may. And I'm back. So to wind up that schedule for voting in all its purity, other than the massive mail-in vote rules, here's a schedule to show you the whole set of dates when you can do this. Starting with November 8 is election day this year. November 3, 4, and 5 are your early voting without excuse days. So that's the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then the days for voting, if you have an excuse but want to do it in person, are 26, 27, 28, 31, 1, and 2. Also, for the complexity of this, there is no short way to say October 26, 27, 28, 31, November 1, 2. There are no ways to compact that enough, including you can't say October 26 to 31 because you can't do that option on the weekend. But these are good options. We have multiple ways to make this fit into all the ways our personal schedules and mobility and travel plans work. So I recommend that you choose the one that fits best for you. And I have a faint preference for the earliest day that fits for you, because if there's any kind of trip up with your ID, if there's any kind of trip up with voting machines or lines, if you go at the earliest moment, you still have options. Also, if you're in a position to go early, you reduce the lines for people who really have to go late on election day. Yeah, so I promised to share a little more about reclaiming voting rights in Kentucky for people with past felony convictions who've completed their sentence. They may be able to reclaim their voting rights, particularly if the offense was nonviolent, the conviction was an in Kentucky conviction, and was in a state court rather than a federal court. If you know someone for whom that's an important option, there are 3 ways to check on this. One, you can scan the QR code, and that will take you right to the web page. You can go to civilrightsrestoration.org to get more information. You can call 502-782-9371. This is an opportunity to welcome our fellow citizens back to full participation. And we're trying to make sure everyone knows that's available. and is in a position to help others if they know someone else for whom that could be important. So to take you back to the 5 questions about getting people ready, the questions are, is your voter registration up to date? And that's worth checking. Which photo ID will you use? Which voting option will you use from that mail, early, excuse, and election day set of choices? Where will you vote? How are you going to help families, friends, and neighbors answer these questions and participate in our democracy? And I'll put in a special plea for anyone you know who is new to the state or even to your immediate area, and anyone you know who doesn't drive would be 2 kinds of folks I would especially recommend checking in with to make sure they're in a position to be participants in our voting process. For folks looking for information, I do want to make a pitch for our Vote 411 option for learning about the candidate. This is a National League of Women Voters effort that Kentucky League is participating in on a big basis. And the way this works is candidates are invited to share information and answer questions. Their responses plus issue information we've prepared are shared at vote411.org. And you can go there, enter your area code, and have them show you the information that's relevant for you. Information on how to vote and the logistics on the process are also available there with Kentucky specific information we've worked to set up to have it be readily available to you. What's on the ballot this year? A whole bunch of positions. We've got a Senate seat, 6 House seats, half of the state Senate, all of the state House of Representatives, a whole set of judgeships and Commonwealth attorneys, many, many, many local offices in city and county government, and 2 constitutional amendments. I'm going to give you the briefest, what's in these constitutional amendments so you're a prepared voter. Mostly because constitutional amendments don't knock on your door. Many of the candidates who want your vote may show up and seek you out, but the constitutional amendments need a little voice to have people ready to see what's coming. Amendment 1 deals with special sessions of the General Assembly. Yes votes and passage of this amendment will mean, if that happens, legislators can meet more often and change Kentucky law more often. For the first time, the Speaker of our House and the President of the Senate can call special sessions. Those special sessions can add up to 12 days a year to the legislative calendar, and legislators themselves will define the agenda, meaning the list of topics that they can address in bills while they're in the special session. A no vote in defeat of the amendment will mean we keep the current rules. And the current rules are the legislature can hold a 60-day session in an even-numbered year and a 30-day session in an odd-numbered year. And we only have special sessions when the governor calls them. And the governor has a check and balance role in being able to set the agenda. So that's one thing we're going to vote on. And then the second thing that's going to be on the ballot is an abortion amendment that would say that nothing in the state constitution creates a right to abortion or requires government funding for abortion. So on that one, a yes vote supporting the change will mean that state lawmakers can pass laws restricting abortion, and those who are affected by the laws will not be able to ask state courts to overturn those laws as violating their constitutional rights. A no vote opposing this change means the Constitution will be unchanged, and those affected by state laws can bring cases in state court. That doesn't quite tell you whether they'll win or lose, but they get a day in court and they get a chance to have the justices look at what's in the state constitution in terms of their rights. That's interesting. I seem to have moved slides around a little bit. All right. So for Vote 411, this is a project where we'd love to have additional people help. If you're not seeing answers from candidates in your area, you can ask them to respond. You can share Vote 411 with other voters. You can use it as a way to help them when you check whether they're registered, and we would love to have you as volunteers. You can use the QR code to connect with us. You can email vote411@lwvky.org, and that'll put you in touch with the awesome team that has been pulling that information together to help voters be prepared. This is my first, here's how to work with us further. We'd love to help with questions. We'd love to share this information with other groups. And here you can see, you can reach us at our email, phone, website. You can also use the QR code, right, which you can join our outreach circle, which will get you additional election alerts and voter information, and we would love to have you. I'm going to show you this slide again because I'm about to show you our advocacy agenda. And entering the advocacy agenda, I use the big gold slide. It's gold because purple, gold, and white were the suffrage colors. But it's a big gold slide to show you this little shift in my voice, because the League, which does not endorse candidates or parties, but does advocate on issues, having just done a presentation that gives you information, I do want to show you briefly our advocacy work for this season. And three big topics for us right now are defending reproductive rights, supporting restoration of civil rights for those who have completed felony sentences, and calling for better redistricting. So having just shown you very calmly both sides of the amendment, which you should always have, we do have a view on Amendment 2, which is we are encouraging people to vote no on that amendment. And our core reasons are abortion decisions are medical decisions. What the legislature is asking for is political overreach on constitutional rights. And the implications of this for people who want to be pregnant, as well as for people who don't, are much too big. We're particularly aware that a total abortion ban is estimated to increase maternal mortality by 21%. So we encourage you to vote no on this amendment as a step much too far in legislative power and decisions about who has which rights. For voting rights restoration, we want to alert you that Kentucky is one of 3 states that permanently bans people with felony convictions from voting. The governor did a big executive order when he came in, allowing a set of people in this situation to reclaim their voting rights. But it is actually the case that the number of people who are eligible keeps increasing because we are not reducing the number of people currently locked out. So the League is working to amend the Kentucky Constitution to have the restoration of voting rights be automatic on completion of sentence. For this one too, we'd love to have your participation. You can contact us at our phone number, and Restore the Vote at lwvky.org will also put you in contact with our team on that as an ongoing thing we're going to be working on. 67% of Kentuckians already agree that voting rights should be automatically restored. So we think this is an issue that's time has fully come, and we're ready to keep pushing on it to welcome our fellow citizens back to full participation. And our final issue is redistricting, which is sort of looming and waiting to come back to us. To get an idea of what happened in the last legislative session, we're sharing, this is the map of Kentucky's 6 congressional districts. And if you start out in Fulton County at the west end of the state and look at the shape of District 1, you have a full crash course in what the word gerrymandering means. That's an unworkable district for everyone involved. No matter where you live in that district, it's a multi-hour drive to get to the other end of it. And it doesn't have any deep logic to it as to why those places would be linked together. So we don't like it. We argued against it in the legislature. There is a lawsuit now brought by a set of legislators that has gotten to the state Supreme Court on whether this violates Kentucky constitutional rules for redistricting. In the coming months, if the state Supreme Court overturns the current congressional map and the current House of Representatives map, we get an early opportunity to try to improve this. We don't know if that'll happen, but we may have another opportunity to press for greater public input and fairer maps at the end of the process. So that's a rising challenge. And I will put back up our how to reach out to a slide and now ask, do we have questions? I love questions. I love questions, especially in the chat box. I see one asking when helping registrars using paper form, can the person just enter the last 4 digits of the social security number? And I don't think so. The forms say the full information. I think it's another plus of doing it online, which is you're simply putting it in for state voting officials. You're not handing it to the middle person doing a voter registration drive. But I think the full social security number is required for everybody's voter registration. Other questions? I may make Fran ask me a question.
Oh, well, you got another one that said KFTC said that that SSNs are not required, but I do not think that's correct.
I think it's
you
low
or Jen would but that's I
to check your voter registration. You don't need to enter your social security number. Right. So I have successfully entered just my address.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody asked, will the slides be available?
Approximately. We have a handout that's a whole lot more efficient than giving you copies of the slides with the same information. It's okay. We got interesting additional people who have checked with the Board of Elections office that social security numbers are not required. It's interesting since they ask for them so often. And for people with common names, there's sort of a need for an additional identifier. But if people can successfully register at govoteky.com without filling that in, I'm certainly fine with it. I'd love to know someone who isn't yet registered who would test out whether the system will let you proceed without entering it. Okay, so that's, I will also check with Dave Newton, but fundamentally we need someone to test the website to see if it will let you through. And
there was one too, Susan, on the question of age. Does someone and who have the ability to refuse you on that inquiry?
I have not seen any structure anywhere in state law that allows people to say that's the wrong age. I suppose if a 19-year-old tries it, someone might cough at them once, but I have not heard any supervision of do you have the right application information. This is not a super scrutiny question.
And Cindy put in on the chat, if someone does not want to list a social security number, the county clerk can call them and take it over the phone. So it's important to give your phone number.
Give your phone number where?
I guess on a registration card. If we're talking about the card, is that on there? I don't know.
Okay, Cindy has sent me a see my note, but Cindy, I don't know where to see your note. I will try Cassandra Little's question about a provisional ballot if you're told you can't vote on election day. Provisional ballots are a definite right in federal elections. If you are blocked in any way from voting when you have arrived, say, I want a provisional ballot. And I would push that in every election, although if it's a state-only election like next year, that may not appear. That may not work out for you, but provisional ballots let them check afterward that you're allowed to vote. And that would be a good cleanup for something very strange happened to your voter registration and you're not on the list of people eligible to vote. So we have a whole set of people who've been working on this out ahead of me, who have said on the voter registration card, you can put your phone number. And if you haven't put in your full social security number, it is possible for the clerks to call you. Hooray for everybody who can do that. I would just have a mental alert that those cards are going to go in and you're going to have to follow that if you don't provide your social security number to see that they actually end up checking with you and completing your registration. Okay, cool. I believe I am surrounded by people who have gone in deep on this. And if it works, it works. Hooray. So we have a whole set of people sharing experience, doing it without the full number. That is a big step up for people's privacy. I will commend again. I think the website gives you much quicker. I have finished registering, but multiple systems work. Other questions? So Cassandra has asked, how immediate is confirmation if you register online? I don't know. It would make sense for it to take several days because it goes through the clerk's office, and the clerk in your county mails you out the confirmation card. The confirmation card also tells you your voting locations. So you want to go ahead and have that set up, but it's not instant. You can also check if you go back to the website to check your registration, you should be able to see it confirmed the day the clerk is finished putting you in. We're in that window where people have till October 11th to get registered. And my general mood is no one should ever procrastinate on that, because the earlier you do it, the easier it is to fix anything that goes glitchy. We saw a question about whether the slides will be available. We're going to sort that out within the next hour and a half, because I have been arguing that we've got a 2-page handout that is much easier to work with, but people love the slides. And my aversion is keeping everything up to date if we get even a second's worth of new information to add. But yes, we share everything eventually. Now doing wait time for a couple more questions. We do that.
The handout is fine. Please share the link. Do we have a link to the handout, Susan? Or
I
Jen?
haven't checked the website to get there fast enough.
I'm getting it. I'll post
Okay.
it in the chat.
Good.
Okay, watch the chat and Jen's going to get it up.
Right. So Cindy asked if we talked about college students registering, not separately, but the fundamentals are college students who are resident in Kentucky, either as their home or as the place where they're spending 9 months a year as students, can register in either place. You can either register at your home or at your college. Don't do both. That's not okay. You only get one vote, but you can register in either location and decide which one to do. If you are going to be a student living outside of your home county, but registered in your home county, you want to use the mail-in option or plan on a drive home to get your voting done. And the link is now in the chat for the handout to let you see. All of this information displayed, I think, a little more efficiently for sitting and reading it as opposed to seeing it on a screen. And with that, Fran, I think we're ready for you to close us out.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Susan. As always, it was wonderful. Susan is not just the presenter, but she's actually the one who developed these slides in this presentation. And I think it's a great way for all of us to get this information and also share it with others. Although, as Susan was saying, we do have that the 2-page handout, but this is really a great way. The important thing is, of course, is that we all vote and that we encourage other people to vote. And we thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.
Okay.